Welcome to Byte-Sized Tech, where we like to take these sort of casual but hopefully insightful looks at all the latest stuff happening in the world of tech and gadgets and all that.
Sounds good to me.
All right, so for today's deep dive, we've got, well, I guess you could call it a buffet of tech news.
A buffet.
Yeah, a little something for everyone. We're going to be talking about this whole crazy surge in AI billionaires. Like, are they just minting those things now? Then we've got Europe kind of throwing a wrench into the whole Chinese electric vehicle game. And then to top it all off, we're going to try and unpack this whole CoreWeave IPO and what it might mean for the future of AI infrastructure. And of course, we've got our resident expert here to help us make sense of it all. And maybe, just maybe, we'll have a few laughs along the way. So ready to dig in?
Absolutely. Let's dive in. It's a really interesting time right now, with all this groundbreaking tech colliding with, well, global economics and all these different investment strategies. What I find particularly fascinating is how these seemingly separate events are all intertwined.
Yeah, it's like they're all threads in the same tapestry, right?
Exactly. And they're weaving together this really complex picture
Yeah.
of just how fast the tech landscape is changing.
For sure. Okay, so let's start with this whole AI billionaire thing, because it's pretty wild. Bloomberg Technology just dropped this report, and honestly, it's kind of hard to believe.
What is it?
29, count them, 29 founders across 8 different companies have either already become billionaires or are about to be.
Wow.
Yeah, their stakes in these companies are worth like a combined $71 billion. That's just an insane amount of wealth generated in like what feels like the blink of an eye.
It really puts into perspective the perceived value, the potential that people are seeing in AI right now.
Yeah.
You're right, it's a ton of money.
Yeah.
And it shows just how much the market is betting on these individuals and the teams at the forefront of this technology.
I mean, think about it, right? Some of these names, like Perplexity, they've got a product that people are actually using, which kind of makes sense.
Yeah, sure.
But then you've got these other companies, and a lot of them are founded by like OpenAI alumni. They haven't even released anything yet, but they're getting these crazy valuations. Thinking Machines Lab, for example. They're trying to raise $1 billion at a $9 billion valuation.
$9 billion.
$9 billion. And what have they got? Not a whole lot to show for it yet, at least publicly. Then you've got Safe Superintelligence, which is less than a year old, and they're valued at $32 billion. It's like the market's just throwing money at anyone who's ever breathed the same air as Sam Altman.
I see what you mean. It really does seem like the market is putting a premium on potential, on talent, sometimes even more than actual tangible results.
Yeah.
It's a big departure from how tech investments have traditionally worked, where you need to show some traction, prove that you can actually make money.
Right. It used to be all about like, show me the revenue. Now it's more like, tell me about your dreams for the future of AI.
Exactly, and that raises some important questions. Is this faith, this blind faith almost, misplaced? And what kind of pressure does it put on these startups to actually deliver? I mean, they're being set up for some pretty monumental expectations.
It's like as soon as you leave OpenAI, bam, instant unicorn status. You don't even need a product, just that OpenAI pedigree. It's wild.
And I think it shows just how crucial that specific experience, that OpenAI connection, is viewed in the AI world right now.
Yeah, it's like having OpenAI on your resume is the ultimate golden ticket. It's like investors are saying, okay, you worked at OpenAI, so clearly you're about to disrupt something huge. It's almost baked into the valuation.
Yeah, you could say that. And while there's no doubt that the people coming out of these leading AI labs are incredibly talented, you have to admit there's a certain level of speculation involved in these investments. It feels like there's this fear of missing out on the next big AI wave, and that's pushing valuations into, well, maybe uncharted territory.
Fear and hype. A potent cocktail, that's for sure. Okay, let's shift gears a bit and talk about something a bit more down to earth.
Right, what's that?
The EU, they're getting serious about Chinese electric vehicles. We've been hearing so much about how Chinese EVs were making a big push into Europe, but it seems like they've hit a bit of a roadblock.
You're right. We often focus on the US and China, but the EU has also been taking steps to address what they see as unfair competition, And the tariffs they put in place last year, well, those have definitely had an impact on the sales of Chinese EVs in Europe.
Yeah, it's not just a slowdown either. Remember all that talk about Chinese EVs flooding the European market?
Yeah, for sure.
Well, in February, the number of Chinese EV registrations actually went down, even though the overall EV market in Europe was growing.
That's a pretty clear sign that those tariffs are working, at least in terms of making Chinese EVs less competitive on price.
Mm.
But what I think is really interesting is who's benefiting from this. Tesla, for example, their cars are also made outside the EU, and their sales in Europe have been dropping too.
You know what? I did see that. And some people are saying that a lot of it has to do with, well, how Elon Musk is perceived, especially in places like Germany. It's kind of crazy how personal opinions and politics can actually affect people's buying decisions, even when it comes to something like electric cars.
It's a good point. It just goes to show that consumer sentiment and the broader political landscape can have a real impact on how trade policies play out.
Mm.
And in this case, it seems like the big winners aren't other foreign car makers, but actually European companies.
Yeah.
Like Renault, they're doing well with their smaller, more affordable EVs, and then you've got Volkswagen with their larger models. They're both seeing increased sales.
It's like the EU inadvertently gave their own car industry a boost. It just shows you that these global markets, they're super complex, and sometimes things play out in ways you'd never expect.
Absolutely. And, it ties back into what we were talking about earlier with those AI valuations. Government policies, even the actions of individual people, they can have a huge impact on companies, even in industries that are changing as quickly as electric vehicles or AI.
Okay, so moving on. Let's talk about AI infrastructure and specifically this whole CoreWeave IPO. This was supposed to be like the big test.
The big test
For the AI hype, is it real? And also for the IPO market, which has been kind of sluggish lately. Everyone was watching to see how this would play out.
It was definitely a much anticipated event. CoreWeave is a crucial player in the AI world. They provide the computing power, the data centers that all these advanced AI models need. They're like the landlords of the AI brain, so their IPO was bound to be under a lot of scrutiny.
Yeah, for sure. But things didn't exactly go as planned. They had to scale back the IPO quite a bit. They were originally hoping to raise something like $4 billion, but they ended up with $1.5 billion.
1.5.
And the initial price was set at $40 a share, which was lower than expected. I think it was supposed to open around 45. So it seems like investors weren't as enthusiastic as some folks thought they'd be.
Yeah, it looks like it. The tech IPO market has been pretty cautious lately, and investors are being more careful about where they put their money. The fact that CoreWeave had to downsize and lower the price, well, it suggests that there were some doubts, whether it was about CoreWeave specifically, maybe their business model or concerns about their level of debt, or maybe it was just broader worries about whether these AI valuations are sustainable in the long run.
Yeah, and then you had NVIDIA, who are like the big dogs in AI chips, and they're also a major client and investor in CoreWeave. They own something like 60%. They stepped in with a $250 million investment to basically prop up the IPO at that $40 price. When a backer that big feels the need to do that, it does make you wonder.
It does raise some questions. I mean, on the one hand, you could see it as a big vote of confidence from a key player in the AI space. But on the other hand, it also suggests that there might not have been enough demand from other investors at the price they were hoping for. It really highlights how interconnected all these companies are within the AI ecosystem.
Right, it's not just about CoreWeave, it's about the whole AI landscape.
Exactly.
And there's another interesting twist to this whole thing. The largest shareholder in CoreWeave is actually Magnetar Capital, and they're not your typical venture capital firm. It's a bit unusual to see them leading a tech IPO like this, don't you think?
It is a bit different. Magnetar usually focuses on businesses that require a lot of capital, which does fit with CoreWeave's business model, building and running these huge data centers. So their involvement might mean they're thinking long term. They see the fundamental need for computing power in the AI age, and they're not just chasing quick growth.
Makes sense. Which brings us to Sam Altman's now famous comment about GPUs melting.
Oh yeah, melting.
Because of all the demand for ChatGPT, right? I mean, that paints a picture of this insatiable hunger for AI processing power. So the question is, are we building too many AI data centers, or is the demand really that strong and going to stay that way?
That's the million-dollar question right now. Some analysts are saying that we're building capacity too quickly, and that if demand doesn't keep up, we could end up with a glut of AI data centers.
So like an AI housing bubble.
Yeah, kind of like that. But on the other side, you've got companies like CoreWeave and investors like Magnetar who are betting big. that the need for AI computing power is only going to explode in the coming years.
Okay, so on that note, what about all these restrictions the U.S. government's put on exporting AI chips to China?
Ah, yes.
There's been a lot of talk about that. Jason Oxman, for example, he said that a lot of folks in the tech industry are worried about how the Biden administration's handling this whole thing. He even suggested that if Trump gets back in, the industry might ask him to, like, hit the reset button and start over. What are they so concerned about?
I mean, the main concern is about how effective these restrictions will actually be and whether they'll have unintended consequences.
Like what?
Well, everyone understands the goal, right? You don't want China's military getting their hands on the most advanced AI tech. But the tech industry is saying that these regulations were put in place too quickly, without enough input from them, and that could end up hurting American companies.
How so?
Well, it could limit their access to the Chinese market, and it might even push China to develop their own competing technologies.
So the restrictions could actually backfire and make China more self-sufficient in AI, which would obviously not be good for the U.S. in the long run.
Exactly. It's a tough balancing act. You've got national security on one side, and on the other side, you want to make sure the U.S. stays ahead in the global tech race.
Hmm.
And Oxman also brought up another interesting point, which is that these restrictions could also end up limiting access to AI technology for U.S. allies in the EU, which could create unnecessary problems.
So it's a mess.
It's complicated for sure.
Yeah. Not just tariffs on actual products, but restrictions on the technology itself and all the ripple effects that has across the world. It really shows how intense this global competition is becoming, especially when it comes to AI and all the infrastructure that goes with it.
For sure. And I think it all circles back to CoreWeave in a way. David Snyderman from Magnetar, he said that they see CoreWeave as the gold standard when it comes to AI infrastructure. He talked about how there's this insatiable demand and that Magnetar is in it for the long haul with CoreWeave. And he also emphasized that Magnetar is really focused on those capital-intensive parts of the AI economy, things like compute, energy, and real estate. And they see themselves as playing a key role in making it cheaper for companies to invest in those areas.
Right, and he even mentioned that big lease deal between CoreWeave and OpenAI, which really reinforces the idea that there's strong and growing demand. So even though the IPO wasn't a blockbuster, it seems like the big players, the ones with the deep pockets, are still really bullish on specialized AI infrastructure providers like CoreWeave.
Yeah, they seem to be. And it's fascinating to think about this in the context of what some other firms are doing, firms like Long Journey Ventures.
What do they do?
Well, they talk about investing in absurd startups,
Hmm.
backing founders who have these unconventional, maybe even crazy-sounding ideas. Maybe the whole AI boom, the speed at which it's grown, maybe that seemed absurd a few years ago.
Right, it was kind of out of left field.
But these investors, they're willing to take a chance on people who see a future that most of us can't even imagine yet. Maybe that leap of faith, that willingness to believe in something that seems a little absurd today, maybe that's what's driving this whole AI revolution.
That's a really interesting way to think about it. It's like maybe all this wealth we're seeing being created, all this investment in AI infrastructure, maybe it's all part of this giant bet on a future that's going to be completely reshaped by AI.
It's exciting and a bit scary all at the same time.
For sure. Well, I think we've covered a lot of ground today. From AI billionaires to EU tariffs on EVs to the wild world of AI infrastructure, it's clear that the tech landscape is constantly changing and full of surprises.
It is, and I think it highlights how important it is to look beyond the headlines, to really understand how technology, economics, and global politics are all intertwined and how they're shaping the future.
Absolutely. Thanks for joining us for this deep dive into the ever-evolving world of tech. If you enjoyed the show, don't forget to like, comment, share, and subscribe for more fun and insightful discussions on all things tech and gadgets.